I'm just going through comments from yesterday, and somebody's pointed out. I made a comment about 85% of Russians can't read. I think that's wrong. Really, it's not true. And this person, cause for concern, cites that and says, "And you have the gall to call others propagandists." Well, yeah, I do. I think what I should have said is 85% of Russians don't read. The literacy in Russia is quite good, but outside Moscow, across the great breadth of the Russian country, people don't read, and they rely heavily on watching the news, watching the television, which in most Russian houses seems to be on permanently. And I was slightly shocked by that. But I know what the diet of Russian television is like, because I've been on it and because I've seen it at first hand. And it's not very good. It's very repetitive, and it's very a propagandist. And that was in peacetime. I can only imagine how much more so it's got in a state of war. The access to other forms of information is very limited. So if you don't read newspapers, and even if you do read newspapers, there's very few newspapers which have a breadth of information. And again, I keep my eye on the Russian newspapers as well, and they don't say very much about the special military operation if they can avoid talking about it. And so if that is what you're getting the impression in modern Russia that there is no serious war, which is why the Ukrainian effort to bring the war into Russia is such a brilliant, inspired idea. And something Gardner 4 says, "Hello, comrade. How's the supply of potatoes and vodka holding out in St. Petersburg or whoever God-forsaken part of Muscovy you're in?" Well, it's very entertaining. But yes, I think there's quite a lot of trolling going on at the moment, and while I applaud the effort of people to leave comments, I'm sorry people have to wade through this rubbish. Mary Jones says, "Why didn't Ukraine allow Crimea and Donetsk to rejoin Russia, as was their wish and which they voted for?" Well, the votes were staged. A plebiscite is the tool of a dictator, as we saw in history through Mussolini, Hitler. Both are very useful to Ukraine. One in industry, Donetsk, and Crimea must be strategic. Ukraine bombed and terrorized the ethnic Russians for 11 years, and no one said anything. And well, Ukraine responded as best it could to the attack on Crimea and the seizure of Crimea by Putin in 2014. And indeed, the Russian troops in Crimea and Donetsk, the Wagner Brigade and other private units causing problems. Ukraine simply responded to that, and I don't know really where Mary Jones gets her stuff. Why is England, she says, why is England and the US, why are England and the US so interested in Ukraine? Is it all the resources in the ground and the great fertile plains? Did they plan to move NATO in and place missiles that could reach every Russian city? The Minsk agreement was never honoured. No, because it was a bad agreement, and Zelensky said he wanted to change it. And the Russian language was banned entirely from Ukraine. What utter crap. I was in Russia until 2019. Ukrainians spoke Russian as a default language, as do many Kazakhs, as do people in Uzbekistan. Russian is the default language. It was never banned. And it was only after the invasion in 2022 by Putin that Ukraine even became a the sort of the language of choice in schools. Ukrainian was not the language promoted significantly in Ukrainian schools before that time. Though I think it was spoken, and most Russian families in Moscow that I knew had Ukrainian relatives. Did the conscious dissolution of the Soviet Union never happen? Who kept the Cold Era stance up? There's not enough question marks in this. Why should Europe freeze and German farmers go broke because England and the US seem intent on destroying Russia? I don't think we are intent on destroying Russia. We're intent on stopping Russia destroying Ukraine. Britain was an empire, the US was the military top dog, but those days are long gone. Are these countries bad losers or disgusting bullies who won't play nice in the sandbox? Russia is a nuclear power. You poke the bear and you don't think England would ever suffer a consequence. How are the submarines looking right now? There's too many absent question marks. You seem like a cartoon, Brit professor. I don't understand that, but it's lovely to be identified as a piece of animation. Somebody must have done a lot of work. Thank you. Mary Jones also. Oh, Mary Jones is saying a lot. Mary Jones says, I saw a video that seems to come from a truthful YouTube channel. It said that that Earth will capture a small asteroid and it will orbit Earth for 53 days and then fling it off to travel around the sun. This happens on the 24th of September. It is house-sized, asteroid 2024 PT5, captured by Atlas in August 2024. I've never heard that asteroids orbit and slingshot off again. I'm fairly certain that incoming objects explode before they reach the ground. Well, you know, I don't. It was an interesting idea. And Callum Turkington says, and they wonder why the public say they're all the same and in it for themselves. And that's about the Prime Minister and what his wife are wearing. Yes, well, you know, the problem with an elite is that the language changes, but the reality stays the same. It's not unlike that final scene in Animal Farm. Steve P.I. says, Putin's dire health, much like sanctions and wonder weapons, are constantly recurring examples of why uncritically consuming propaganda makes you extremely poor at predicting realistic outcomes. Don't quite know what the point is there, but thank you for all these for all these comments. They're very stimulating.